I continue to be honored to represent Manitoba as one of the members of the board of directors of the Organic Federation of Canada. Now, this opening picture, I couldn't find the picture of the few of us from the board members that got together, but I really love this picture because both Margaret Graves, who's standing beside me, who was one of the minute takers for the meeting, and Andy Heimemeister, who I'm sure so many of you know, they are in the riding of Dr. Stephen Ellis, who's the fellow in the middle in the suit, who is the conservative health critic, and Mylene Bosch, who is with the CODA, standing in the burgundy jacket. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the cheese producer from Quebec, who's at the end. She set up a number of meetings with us as part of the Organic Summit to basically ask for three things. And Stephen Ellis, Dr. Stephen Ellis, we thought we really need to make some connections with these conservative folks. If there is a change of government, we believe that organic should be nonpartisan and everybody should be supporting it. And that our basic ask when at this meeting, which he thought was very reasonable, was that in Canada, we need more organic data. And so our three asks were, help us implement a robust organic data strategy to make organic data publicly available. For example, right now we're asking the certification bodies to gather the data, and that is such a time sink, and they're not getting money for the staff time to do that. So yes, we need the data, but it shouldn't be on the backs of the certifiers or the operators. So we need some support for the organic data strategy. We also think we need an organic market growth fund, because I've got a slide later on where you see we've slipped to 9th in terms of exporting organic to the States. So there's a whole bunch of countries in South and Central America who are shipping more organic product to the States than us. Because right now, most of the supports for organic in Canada are for our regulation, for enforcement, not for actually developing new tools or investing to support our certifiers and support our organic operators. And our third ask as part of this lobbying is to establish an organic production support, to support more knowledge transfer, to support more organic operators, and to drive the transition to organic so that we don't lose these markets that we are losing, with organics being a $9 billion sector. We've got now 7,558 certified organic operations in Canada. We've got almost 6,000 certified producers, which is about a 2% decrease since 2022, 1953 certified producers. And so, you know, we need some support. So we were trying to make sure to lobby. And of course, Andy always does a wonderful job, and Margaret, being right from his riding. Margaret even played rugby with his daughters. So we had some good reception there at Dr. Stephen Ellis, the conservative health critic, who did listen to us about our claims of, you know, increasing. We're seeing that organic is healthier for us and that there's more antioxidants in organic products. So we need more data and more research on the benefits of organic. Okay, so here we are at the Canadian General Standards Board Technical Committee meeting that we just held November 19th to 22nd in Hull, Quebec. You can barely see me. I'm like 6th from the end on the far side. I've got my burgundy leather vest on, keeps me warm. And right up front and center. So you're looking over the shoulder of Alison Grant there, who I believe deserved a medal for not only chairing the crops working group, but the crop permitted substance list, which is the one that I served on. And you can see in the dark hair beside the one woman in the orange shirt at the top of the table, Marie-Ève Levert, who was the chair of the meeting. So those were the three folks I wanted to point out to you, though I was delighted to be sitting between Simon Jacques, who represents OCO, long time, trained him many years ago through IOIA, long time activist, well, you know, active in organic agriculture. He was also on the crop PSL and is really sort of our science geek, because I love it. but have 2 uncompleted degrees. I think my being a little neurodivergence had something to do with that. And I'm also beside a fellow, Francois Lavoie, that I worked with extensively previously on the livestock standards. So I was honored to be beside them. And then just beside Francois is Kelly Monahan, who took over from me as representing inspectors on the voting group. So we worked in 2 languages. Um, there was a lot of French spoken. We had 2-minute takers. You see them over on the side, Margaret Graves, and another woman, I'm afraid I'm misplacing her name. 2.5 days. We were the voting members reviewing the decisions from about 160 2-hour working group meetings. So that's the crop PSL, the crop, the livestock, the permitted substance list. Generally, Rissel Eisen attended virtually. She still chairs the processing and the integrity section. So lots of working groups, lots of very dedicated, experienced volunteers. I was an honor to be among them. And so we do most of our work virtually now. We have Google databases where Google spreadsheets where we go through. I tried to take screenshots to give you an example, but it was just so much information. I thought I'd focus on the people more. But we go through, so I think there were close to 300 petitions, and then they all get divided up by the various working groups and grouped together. Sometimes we got several petitions about the same topic. Some of you know that one of the things that was really driving me is I've heard from so many farmers on the prairies and from Dr. Stuart Hill and Nick Lampkin. Some of the first organic courses I took way back 32 years ago talked about phosphorus was a weak spot in organics, and we were going to have to deal with phosphorus. So I've been working for 10 years on getting struvite from recycled wastewater, from municipal recycled wastewater allowed. And so that's why I was active on the crop PSL, which I have been before, but I limited some of my other activities to just the crop PSL this year. Okay. So here I am with Dr. Gladys Zanatti, who gave a presentation. This is at the Organic Summit that I went to just before. And because I was a Manitoba rep, they gave me Manitoba Organics, they gave me a discounted price of $475, which was still very expensive for a day and a half. But I really thought it was worth it, so I paid for it. But it would be good for it to be budgeted, because I lobbied other voters. I identified other voters I hadn't on the technical committee. Some were at that. But for me, just when Dr. Zanatti was presenting the results on how much organic and low-till organic benefit the soil, it just moved me to tears. And she insisted on having a picture taken with me because of my reaction to her research. I just thought of all the organic operators who don't really know how much they're benefiting their soil by doing what they're doing. And it was so affirming of their hard work. And I really wish more operators, we need that knowledge transfer so people can understand improving their organic matter is doing so much for helping them mitigate drought or just the severe weather situations that we're encountering. So just in terms of the organic production, I shared a little bit of their data. It's now a $9 billion sector in Canadian agriculture. Organic has close to 6% of the fresh vegetable market, close to 5% of the fresh fruit market in Canada, 3.4% of prepackaged grocery products. And a few organic facts: eating organic fruits and vegetables could increase your antioxidants by 20 to 40%. As I said, there's mounting evidence that there's increased nutritional value in organics. We definitely know it reduces health risks by minimizing exposure to toxic and persistent chemicals and pesticides. And that the same strict standards apply to small, medium, large. Our organic values, health, ecology, fairness, and care can be applied at all scales of production. And research is showing that organic farming methods can mitigate climate change by sequestering carbon in the soil and decreasing greenhouse gas emissions. So the Rodale Institute, our International Organic Inspectors Association is working with the Rodale Institute to set up, both on their east and west coast research facilities, more training of organic inspectors. You know, IOIA is the premier trainer of organic inspectors. We're trying to diversify the number and the background of people in organics, and Rodale, we're working as allies with Rodale in this. So anyway, but I don't even think that Dr. Zanatti knew that I was the president of IOIA. She just knew I was very moved by her research. Okay, so here's another shot. Andy Hammermeister took these shots. You'll be able to see more probably, you know, organic. Nicole Boudreau, our coordinator through Organic Federation of Canada, does a great job with InfoBio. And so I've put the link in here in a couple places you can see, but really direct people. Janet Wallace does wonderful write-ups. So you can go to InfoBio and go to OFC's website. So what we're looking at now is, because we're not sure about if an election could really mess up our timing, but we definitely need to have our standard published by December 2025, and we need to have about a 60-day comment period. So if we do wind up with a spring election, then the comment period will be pushed into our growing season, which we know is such a drag for you growers. But we don't know when it will be. Ideally, it would be April and May or March and April, but I don't think that's going to happen. Our next meeting is February 19th, where we will address some of the few petitions that we did not get to at this meeting. So we will not meet again. This was our one in-person meeting with representatives from across the country. I think I was the only representative from Manitoba. Jason Peters I thought was a voting member, but Jason wasn't able to attend. In the front corner there, you see the back of Jim Robbins' head from Saskatchewan, and right across from him, you see Allison from Saskatchewan as well. Upland Organics, voting as the president of COG. Jim was voting as the president of OFC. So another one of our OFC members. And anyway, lots of, and about 5 representatives from Quebec, because, you know, Quebec really does support organic in a huge way. And so they have a number of different, they have La Table Filière and the CAEQ, and there's lots of different folks from Quebec that actively participate and vote. And so I would like to see more from the prairies. I do think it's very important that our voice be heard loud and clear. So there we are once again, and there'd be 2 screens, one in French, one in English. Plus you see us looking down at our computers. We're also following along in the computers. We've got live time. Margaret Graves and the other excellent secretaries updating as we suggest changes to the wording. We see it in real time. Sometimes there's just a little bit of tweaking. Sometimes it's got to go back to the working groups. We say, no, we can't accept this. So this is the voting members of the technical committee. So it's gone through the working groups, and the working groups, you know, recommend certain things, and then the whole group has to read ahead of time the rationale of why we read it, and then come prepared to ask questions or to vote. Any questions so far? Okie doke. All right, I just had to say that we always keep in mind the IFOAM standard for standards upon which our Canadian Organic Standard is based, and our values of health, ecology, fairness, and care. And one of the projects that I enjoyed doing the most when I was able to get funding for the Organic Food Council of Manitoba, which is to sort of address the more small scale local food for local production, was our children's activity book to just educate the next generation about organics. So this was a good example of support for public education from a number of fairly high profile producers like Manitoba Hemp and Vita Health and Nature's Path. They all supported this project. Cut this slide off a bit, but I really wanted to point out, as the Organic Summit did, that we are missing opportunities for our farmers. You see in this list, now this is a couple years old, but as far as I know, it hasn't changed too much. I got this from a webinar I was on, offered by the Agricultural Marketing Service of the National Organic Program. And you can see Canada's 9th, but we've had increased, I think this was 2021, I'm not sure, we had increased by 5%. But look at the increases from Honduras, 44%. And these are in thousands. So it's not, Canada didn't trade 119,000. It was 119 million. So this is in US $1,000. But look at how much Honduras had increased their share of trading to the US, 44%. Okay, Ecuador and Italy were down a bit, but Chile was up 38%. Argentina was down a bit, but look at Colombia, Brazil up 28%, Peru up 29%, Mexico up 39%. And in my mind, with Mexico, yes, they have a different climate than we do, but we're missing opportunities for our farmers that Canada isn't number 2 in exporting to the States, given the special relationship we've always had with our huge neighbor to the south.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I can see that the majority of the countries that are in this top 10 are like warmer countries, and I'm wondering if how much of what the product is plays into
Of course, it would have an impact. Yes, it would have an impact. Yeah, this is not an in-depth presentation, but I still think it's such a small percentage. Like, we're still, it's just such a small percentage of it. It shows the lack of support that we're getting from our government is really what I'm stressing with this. That if we could shift away from just a regulatory, bureaucratic support from the federal government to actually more production support and some knowledge transfer, we could be more competitive. That's my main, and you can find more information on this through the National Organic Program website if you like. But this was so striking to me. I just wanted to increase that. Of course, we're never going to produce bananas and coffee.
Yeah.
But and oranges and stuff. But we used to be way more self-supporting in onions and carrots and vegetables. Like we import way more vegetables now than we did when I was a child, in the 60s. It all sort of shifted, and to me, that really does not complement our health, that we want to be focusing on more prevention for our health. So we should be growing more vegetables locally, and they'll be healthier for us. They won't have to travel so far, and they'll be organic. So that was my focus on this, is that we're missed opportunity by basically, if you look at the NOP, which has 95 full-time staff people, and that's not all regulation and oversight and conformity. A lot of the patient handling the grants that they're giving out. Almost every state, you can apply for some or all of your certification costs to be reimbursed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would also, if you look at the from 1 to 10, the difference between Canada and Honduras is it's quite especially in 2019. So I just wanted to dig in just a little bit more on what the actual opportunities are when we're talking about competing against tropical type countries.
There's realities there. Absolutely. But would you agree that we are missing opportunities?
Yes, I think that these conversations, we already have such a deep trade partnership with the United States, and it is such a massive market. There's no reason why Italy should be able
above
to
us.
spend more than us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's my basic point right there. Okay, so a little background. So here is a shot from the 2015 in-person Organic Technical Committee meeting. And in the back row in brown and glasses, you can see Marvin Dick representing Poplar Grove Farms. In the front, in the back was, in the front with the black is Priscilla Reimer, who at that point was representing Manitoba Organic Alliance. And you can see me, Kelly's in the front with the tan jacket and the scarf, and I'm just behind her, also in a tan jacket. And at that point, I was representing the Organic Food Council of Manitoba. But we really have not, I have not been able to get funding for us. I've not been able to get more volunteers. So we've basically been in stasis and just continuing to be as active as I can promoting organics, just because I really believe in it. It's been so good for my health and my family's health. And I've really loved the career that I've been able to make in it. So you see, at that point, we had 3 representatives from Manitoba, and I think that's appropriate. You know, the challenge is I don't know how much MOA paid. I think I was able to get for that one. I seem to remember doing inspections on the way there and inspections on the way back. And because I was the OFC rep, again, we schedule our in-person meetings at the same time. So the Organic Federation of Manitoba, the Organic Federation of Canada paid for my flight to Ottawa. I do believe I had to absorb the housing cost myself. So it is expensive, and I am pleased to hear that the Motive board are looking at an ongoing budget, because as I say, you have to be prepared to invest, but I think it gives you a lot back. And for those of you that haven't met me before, I just thought I would wrap up with a little bit of an introduction. That yes, I've done a lot of volunteer work. I've worked as a verification officer for 31 years and a trainer for about 28. I'm currently finishing my 3rd term as the president of the International Organic Inspectors Association. And I was the one that lobbied for the government that inspectors should have a voice. And the Canadian Committee of IOIA should be a voting member of the CGSB Technical Committee. And so I started doing that when it was first founded, but I've been lobbying for the CGSB process because I represented IOIA in the NOP standard making process and really saw the unbalanced weight of the high-priced corporations in influencing their standard. And so I really thought we needed to have a more democratic standard in Canada that was monitored by an independent group to make sure our voices were heard equally. I'm pleased to be finishing another term. I think it's my 9th or 10th term on the board of Canadian Organic Growers, where I've been working with also as a representative of OFC on the Canadian Organic Alliance, where OFC, COG, and CODA are working together with one voice with government so that they hear a clear, consistent message of our 3 major asks, which came out of the organic action plan that COG and CODA and OFC have been working on. So, I mean, many of you might not know there's an organic action plan, but I think it's really excellent. And I've been representing OFC on that COA board that meets more often. Plus, I understand the process, the standards process, having served as a voting member since 1998. I also did 9 years of service on the Standards Interpretation Committee run by OFC and Nicole. The CFIA stopped funding it, but Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada took it over because CFIA and Ag Canada, they don't know our values. They don't know the IFOAM standard for standards that we're trying to implement so that we can be easily seen as equivalent to our other major trading partners around the world. So I really just wanted to point out that my work educating consumers through the Organic Food Council, I used to do a lot of local farmers markets, really trying to educate on organic, speaking to those people that had the little cardboard signs that said organic. I'd go and chat with them and they'd say, oh, I only use a bit of urea now. And then I'd say, well, actually, you shouldn't be using the term organic. But that kind of education work is not being funded anymore. So we're really saying we do need more, not only transfer of knowledge to a technical knowledge transfer to our growers to help them deal with increased severe climate events and climate changing, but we also need to educate our consumers so they continue to understand about organics. I will say that at the organic summit, CODA presented some interesting data there that 87% of Canadians report that they always or often or sometimes purchase organic. 40% of those answered always and often, and hey, I'm in that category. 55% report seeking organically produced food always or sometimes. 73% said always somewhat organic products are accurately labeled, so they trust our label. Respondents indicated the important benefits of organic. 60% knew that it's grown with fewer pesticides or chemicals, and 46% said that it was healthier. 60% of Canadians said they're willing to pay more for organic products. So I think that kind of outreach to organic consumers, where we show them what organic means and give them an opportunity to ask questions, is very important. So I just also wanted to finish up by saying that my volunteerism is made possible by living on a cooperative farm. You see some of our members here having a potluck. The quality of food and sharing healthy organic food from our gardens. The photo on the other is my grandson helping me pick garlic scapes from my garden. That's my garden in my house, my cabin here on the edge of the boreal forest. We have 240 acres, about 40 open for vegetable and tree production. We used to market organic garlic and organic raspberries. We had a little U-pick. We're not doing that so much anymore, but a lot of us are producing a good percentage of our own food. You can see my solar panels up there. We're off grid. So you're talking to me now. Thank goodness the sun has come out. All of the power that's generating my Wi-Fi is from the deep cycle batteries powered from the sun I collected yesterday. So thank you for your attention and your support in representing you on the Organic Federation of Canada. I would love to be mentoring an alternate or someone that might be interested in taking over from me, because I learned so much at these meetings. It does take a lot of time. I'm always open to a lot of the farmers that I inspect, because I've been working in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, across Canada for 31 years. Folks, don't hesitate to email me. I'm much easier to reach by email than by phone to tell me what they think about the standards and what we need to be doing. And then, of course, you can regularly get updates on the review of the Canadian Organic Standard in more depth from the OFC website, and there's the link for that. So further questions? Any other comments?
Yeah, I guess I have some questions on what the major decisions that were made, if there were any major decisions that were made on
I'm so
standards.
glad you asked that, Michelle. We won the struvite from recycled sources by 1 vote. So my lobbying for sharing the information on how pure a product that is, that it's made from the water that's ready to be released into the environment. So that's the tertiary third stage cleaned water from municipal waste. There's 2 fractions. There's the sewage sludge, which we're not touching, and there's the water, which is recycled, which I think is extremely important to do. We are, what do they estimate, between 70 to 80% water. So I really think it behooves us to take very good care of our water. So we did tentatively approve. Well, it has to go through the comment period, but in my experience, we have never gone back on a decision that's passed at the standard. So the 3 things, we finally got it clear that we're not dealing with the sewage sludge. The sewage sludge still needs to be processed and treated something separately. We did have to recommend a change in our definition of sewage sludge, because in most places in the world, the water fraction, the liquid fraction, is not considered part of the sludge. But in our standard, it was. So we had to separate the water fraction. So we recommended an annotation for that. We also recommended an annotation for purity higher than even the EU has allowed. So struvite from recycled wastewater is allowed now in the European Union. I presented certificates, a link to where that is on the EU website, and certificates from France, Spain, Austria, and Germany, where they are allowing it, because it's like the phosphorus leaves the farm and goes into the cities and then goes into the water. I don't think so. So now We have one technology made in British Columbia. The University of British Columbia created this recycling technology that removes the phosphorus from the water, it pearlizes, and Dr. Joanne Thiessen-Martens and Dr. Martin Enns have been doing research in Manitoba about this product. So of course, that's the one I'm most excited about. I will say that we broke up the micronutrients from just one to a variety of them. And again, because of soil quality issues, and I like to, I say it's because we're dealing with extreme weather events and our farmers need more tools. We did allow more synthetic micronutrients because we're just not getting micronutrients from natural sources. So in the interest of feeding the soil, not the plant, we broke up the micronutrients, and the crop PSL allowed a range of micronutrients from synthetic sources, but that are molecularly identical to the natural ones. And so there's a rationale for all this. Same as struvite, precipitation of struvite is a synthetic process, but it's the phosphorus is only released when the plant gives an exudate that has a variety of acids. So it's not water soluble. So it won't wash off the fields. And so we really think that there's rationale for why we are allowing a slight increase in more synthetic inputs. And so we had very robust discussion on this, clarity about purity, about the rationale, because some of the newer representatives at the event were like, we want to say we're all natural. And I say, well, we can't. I mean, that doesn't mean it's safe. Strychnine is natural. Arsenic is natural. They are not safe. So we make sure that everything fits to Section 10 of our standard, that it goes through rigorous what will be the environmental impact. So those are what's top on my mind. We also, I believe we had 47 petitions from the BCSPCA on livestock, humane handling of livestock. And Ann Macy was in the 2015 photo when I was the chair of the livestock PSL, and she was the chair of the livestock working group. We worked so hard right from the start to ensure there was humane standards in our organic standards, so our operators wouldn't have to double certify like they were doing in the States. So our standards, our livestock standards are higher that's why we have square footage requirements. That's why we are trying to have more insistence on a healthy ration. We sort of moved away from long fiber, because how does an inspector measure the long fiber versus the short fiber? So more goal oriented. What's the outcomes that we want from these standards, rather than being too prescriptive? Because also in Canada, we have such an incredible range of growing conditions that our certifiers and our growers need, our standard needs to be flexible enough to be applied across Canada. So I don't have in my random access memory a lot of the agreements other than the ones that I was intimately involved in, but that will come out through the Organic Federation of Canada, and I can respond to specific questions as I just did. But you can see that it does take a lot of experience. And for me, it helps me to know operations. Like, I left the room after the vote passed because I was in tears, and Andy Hammermeister came out and gave me a big hug, because even though he's with the Organic Ag Center of Canada on the East Coast, he's from Saskatchewan, and he knows how dire it is, how hard it is to get livestock manure, and how hard it is to get the pea that you need for a healthy alfalfa crop. And if you don't have healthy alfalfa to work down, then your whole cycle is nutrient cycling and so that just took so much effort, and I didn't want to have to wait another 5 years, or I knew we would lose great operators like Ian Cushion and other folks that also lobbied tirelessly with me to help folks in other areas know that this was a real prairie issue. And so I am pleased to say that we managed to get it passed, and it will go to comment. But I truly believe that it is not a pollutant. There's no pharmaceutical residue. The whole process, when they put the electricity through the water, it causes the phosphorus to precipitate out in those little pearls. It's like a natural, before it would precipitate out and gung up the pipes, and they would have to ream out the pipes in the municipal wastewater because it kept accumulating. And so the researchers at the University of British Columbia discovered this method that would, with electricity and magnesium rich solution, it just precipitates out and cleans the pipes and isn't water soluble. So we're not getting more phosphorus leaching from our fields, which, I mean, living in highest hogs per hectare in Western Canada, our creek never used to be covered in duckweed, which is a sign of eutrophication. There are no fish in it anymore, and it's covered in duckweed. So these 8 million hogs that we have here in the southeast corner definitely is having a negative impact. I hope someday Astara will build a plant here, or will move away from industrial hog production, because Quebec has a thriving $30 million organic hog production, where they're outside, where they're on the land, where the manure is being composted, which is a much healthier system than this liquid lagoon system we have here. So that's on the top of mind. Insects. Livestock, we're having a category on insects for livestock feed and for human protein. Very interesting presentation on that. So we made the standard more humane. We added a variety of inputs to keep a balanced soil, to help balance the soil. So let's see, crops, livestock, processing, nothing much there. Steady as she goes. Clarification, because like the Standards Interpretation Committee, a lot of the petitions were based on questions that have come from certifiers to the Standards Interpretation Committee. And so a lot of the questions were from those folks that put a lot of work in. I mean, I've never had my brain hurt from thinking as hard as it did when I was serving on the Standards Interpretation Committee, because a lot of I don't know how we're. John, you want to speak?
No, I'm good.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Okay. Is there anything in the chat, Marika? Did anybody have any questions there?
No, I don't think so. Sorry, I got kicked out for about 10 seconds there.
Problem. I did want to say, so I hope everyone on the call knows that the Organic Federation of Canada has a very narrow focus. I mean, it's not simple, it's not easy. We oversee the science cluster. So we oversee, I think I missed that in the, you see, yes, Organic Federation of Canada overseeing and interpreting the Canadian organic standards and the updating process, and the organic science cluster. And I just want to say that I spoke again and will continue to speak, that I think our standards should be updated in an ongoing manner, the way that the Standard Interpretation Committee meets. As questions come in, they address the questions and publish them in their frequently asked questions and put them out to the sector. So there's clarity. And I think our standard to maximize our trading opportunities, we should be updating it as our neighbors update it. Like I was just so fortunate in one of the questions that I answered was, okay, how will us allowing struvite impact our trading relationship with the states, because they don't allow it? Well, we don't allow sodium nitrate, and they allow that. So plus the egg top report from the EU that they were planning on allowing struvite has been out for 6 years. So while the background negotiations have been going on between the Canada and the US equivalency update, it's not a whole new renegotiation, it's just an update. It can either be an exemption, or it won't be a problem, because they allow stuff that we don't allow. We just don't, like we don't allow hydroponic organic vegetables into Canada, because we say hydroponic is not soil-based, and organic is all about ensuring that we value our topsoil and enrich our topsoil so that we don't allow, now aquaponics is a different thing where you can feed the vegetables from the waste of the fish that grow. So that's a little different thing than hydroponics, but that's an example. So those of us that have been involved in the equivalency agreements do not feel that allowing struvite from wastewater, municipal wastewater recycling will in any way negatively impact our allowance in the States. And there were several organic growers at Organic Connections I spoke with who said to me, if the States don't want my grain that's been grown with struvite, I have lots of other markets that do want it. So don't let that hesitate. Don't let that stop you, Janine, from explaining that we really need this phosphorus in order to stay organic.
Thanks, Jane. We did get a question in the chat. Are there any updates on seed sources?
We did not mandate that it has to be organic. That's not finalized yet. So that conversation on seed sources continues. But I always speak for flexibility, because some areas it's much easier to get seed in your area. And again, I believe that organic is a local activity, that you have to look at the reality of where your soil is and where your farm is. And for some people that makes it much more difficult to get organic seed than others. I think we all support the ideal is organic seed, but until we have sources of organic seed that are reliable, like I've come across a number of folks this year that were getting organic seed all the way from Albert Lee Seed House south of Minneapolis. That's way south of Minnesota. Hardly what I would call local, but that's one of our largest and highest quality organic seed sources. But that adds a lot to the cost. So yes, I definitely support moving to use of organic seed, but we need to support our farmers. How can you ask a farmer that's barely making their cost of production to not sell all their flax and hold back their own flax to seed? So we have to balance sustainability in production with sustainability of the bank accounts. And that's one, again, that's one reason why I've been able to donate the amount of time that I have to volunteering for the development of the organic sector. Some of you may know my grandparents farmed organically outside Minnedosa, took off crops, 67 years of crop, never called themselves organic operators, but that's what they were. And that's where I learned the importance of a healthy soil. Plus, then I moved here to where our co-op is south of Steinbach. We have half an inch of topsoil and then pure sand and gravel. So boy, did I learn the benefit of green manure crops and holding on to the nutrients and making compost and getting that soil enriched so that you actually got a better yield. So really want to support growers in getting their organic matter up, and need to ensure that people know that there's a wide range of accessibility to organic seed. It's not easy for everybody.
Thank you, Janine. Next question I have. You talked about some of the potential allowed inputs, specifically micronutrients. Are you able to give a list of the micronutrients that we're talking about allowing? I'm assuming these are minerals that are used in minimum.
Yeah, molybdenum, copper, boron, just trying to balance the soil. They're the micronutrients, calcium, that just occur in the soil that can get out of balance.
And calcium is one that I was specifically curious about. Okay.
Yeah, selenium. Some areas are really selenium deficient. And as livestock inspectors, we're trained to look for the circles around eyes and the qualities that can indicate selenium deficiency. I think selenium salt blocks are much more common now because of that issue. And then there were some micronutrients, those are the ones that spring to mind right away, but there are some micronutrients that we need, but that the animals need to get from the plants, so that it's fairly complex, but basically, the whole range of micronutrients. So we broke them out, and they'll be in the new standard. And you'll have, as I say, once the announcement is that the standard is out for comment, you'll have 60 days, and we have to respond to all the comments. And so we want to make sure that everyone knows, and maybe not everybody wants to use a synthetic micronutrient, but if you see that you're trying to balance your soil and you're trying to get that nutrient cycling happening in your soil, which is so crucial for crop yield, then you want to learn about these things. I mean, I know how crucial it is just because I discovered that one of the banes of my existence farming here and gardening here actually at Northern Sun is I do more I contract out the larger scale farming stuff, but the actual hands-on gardening is we have an extremely low boron soil, which poison ivy loves. Poison ivy won't grow where it's high in boron. So I've done soil tests to see how super low we are so that I could add boron to a healthy level. But like so many of the micronutrients, they can be toxic if they're too high. Well, just a healthy boron level is toxic to poison ivy. And I'm pleased to say I don't have poison ivy growing in any of my garden beds anymore because I've raised the boron level. So that's one example of micronutrients can really help you if they're in balance in your soil, but you need to be doing soil tests. Now we do seem to be moving towards testing. I don't believe we asked for mandatory testing. And I spoke again about encouraging operators to do the kind of soil testing my grandpa did, which was take 2 cups of soil from the top 10 inches. Like you don't want to go on the prairies, it's really the top 10 inches. Put it in a glass jar, shake it up, let it settle. And you can actually see, okay, it's so much clay, so much sand, the water, and then floating on the top is the organic matter. And if you take pictures of these and compare them over time, you can actually see, oh, my organic matter is at 1%. Oh, now it looks like closer than 2%. Now it's 3%. Like, so you can measure the improvement without having a lot of cost. But I do think more and more organic growers are getting the full range of testing and testing for specific micronutrients that could be the bottleneck. Like if you don't have your calcium magnesium balanced in your soil, you could have too much magnesium, plating, clumping, lots of problems. So then you can add calcium to improve the friability and to help the roots move more easily through a very compacted soil. So those are just examples that come to mind.
Thanks, Janine. And last question for me. Are there any inputs that we're talking about disallowing in the new standard update? We've talked about new permitted substance. Is there anything currently permitted that we're talking about removing from the standard?
Nothing comes to mind, Marika.
Okay.
Nothing comes to mind there. No,
Okay.
nothing.
Just thought I'd cover my bases. So
Sure.
I'll open up the chat. Is there any other questions while we have Janine?
Well, thank you all for your support of organics. And I will just say there's creativehealthconsulting@gmail.com. I'm always open to feedback and input. And as again, it's an honor to represent the organic sector on the Organic Federation of Canada and the Canadian Organic Alliance. I will be leaving the board of Canadian Organic Growers. I've termed out, and I will be leaving the presidency in March of IOIA, but I believe they want to have me stay on the board. But I think the cooperation between COTA or OFC and COG is very important. So I'm pleased that Manitoba is involved in that, and that will continue to support moving organics forward across Canada from our beloved Manitoba home base here. So
thanks, Janine.
thank you all.
And Marika.